So ladies, gentlemen of the DCU, last night we got the Creature Commandos panel at New York Comic Con, and we have got so much to discuss in today's video. I'm going to recap the biggest details that we got out of the panel that pertain to Creature Commandos teasers, of course. An example being seeing our first look at DCU Clayface, which is something I really didn't expect to see. But also, very excitingly, we get into some of the broader things that they teased in other areas of the DCU, such as Superman, Lanterns, Supergirl, and more. So, as usual, guys, this video will most certainly have timestamps / video chapters available to skip around on if you wish to do so, but as always, I do recommend staying tuned to the whole video, the whole thing, to stay up to date with my take. Would really appreciate a like on this video if you do go on to enjoy it. I was writing notes that I'm going to be reading off throughout this video last night, and you know, I'm up first thing in the morning here on a Sunday to record this. You should be seeing it today, but also I've got things to do today, so I have no idea how I'm going to get this out today, but either way, a like would be appreciated, and of course, subscribe for more DCU breakdowns like this. So right at the beginning here, they introduced the cast right out the gate. Obviously, it's a panel. Gunn then came out, and they didn't waste any time. They played the new trailer right from the get-go. And I have to say, for me, knowing what Creature Commandos is, having expectations for this trailer based off of that first teaser trailer, I thought it was great. I absolutely adored seeing it. It kind of felt a little bit more real now, seeing it say, from James Gunn comes the new DC, and then the U just kind of slides in there. And we get what I guess I'd like to say is a more visceral look at the Creature Commandos series. And it's way more gorier and bloodier than what I was expecting. But for me, personally, that's a win. Like, I kind of knew this would be quite up there in terms of R-rated. And even in the panel, they discuss how it feels a lot more adult in many areas. With Gunn even joking, saying, or maybe not actually, with the way he was describing it, that he might release a video of Frank Grillo and Maria Bakalova in the voiceover booth, kissing their hands and making, let's just say, noises, because there's certainly very steamy scenes in the show. So there's a little bit of a confirmation between Rick Flag Sr. and Princess Rostovik getting it on, apparently, in episode 2. But basically, it's probably going to get absolutely wild and not shy away from being, again, an adult show. Gunn even mentions that there was one thing in the show that he thought was too much, and he pulled it back a little, but not by very much. So yeah, I think we're all going to be kind of jaw-dropped at times when we're watching this series, for better or for worse. But as you can see, the characters are just so out there in the scenes. I mean, we think that Waller has hired some ruthless people before to get together her Suicide Squad, but these guys, you know, are just getting the mission done in the most bloodiest way, to the point of where I'm probably gonna have to cut around it for this YouTube video. Now, speaking of missions, guys, this is what really excited me. We can actually see at the very beginning of the trailer that we have Anya Chalotra's Circe wake up Maria Bakalova's Princess Rostovik, storming into her palace and blasting her magic. I really like her design here. Again, with stuff like this, knowing it's DCU Canon, it's just making me think, imagine seeing that in live action, played by Anya Chalotra. But I'm also intrigued as to why she's going after Ilana Rostovik here. Why? But as you can tell, the Creature Commandos are going to be dispatched to save her and stop Circe in episode 1, and who knows? I know this is wishful thinking. Maybe we could get a Wonder Woman reference, since Circe is traditionally one of Wonder Woman's villains. But also, fun fact, Gunn also mentions during the panel that Maria Bakalova was the first person that he ever cast in the DCU. Also in the trailer, we get our first look at the DCU's Clayface fighting Rick Flag Sr. Now, we obviously don't quite know how he plays into the show, but what I love about this is, well, seeing Clayface in the animated form here and Gunn's literal DCU canon, but also just imagining the DCU Batman having already faced up against this guy. I even tweeted out when I first noticed this in the trailer that I love the idea of how we're visiting. I mean, I know you guys know this, but just to like hammer it in again, I love how we're visiting a Batman in the DCU with an already developed rogues gallery. I know not everyone's for that. You want to see the origins of this, that, and the other, but, you know, it's an inevitability. It's just the parameter of this DC universe. We're hitting the ground running in many ways with various different characters. And so most importantly here, with this rogues gallery, the DCU just will not shy away from embracing the fantastical aspects of these characters, and just that's very evident with what we're seeing here in the show, from Circe to now Clayface. It's just fantastic because, you know, we've got Matt Reeves's grounded, somewhat unfantastical version of a Batman universe over here. It may walk the line at some times, but you've got the DCU over here, which will fully embrace those qualities to the character. So you kind of got the best of both worlds. Now, this doesn't guarantee that we're going to see Clayface in the Brave and the Bold Batman DCU movie, but, you know, he's out there, and he's smashed Rick Flag Sr. in the face before Rick Flag then goes to pop up in James Gunn's Superman movie. So just know when you're seeing Rick Flag there, he's already received like a clay hammer to his face. Again, I'm so intrigued to see how he fits into this, and again, there could be all kinds of, I'm not going to get my hopes up too much, but teeny little references. Maybe there's references to Batman, Gotham, stuff like that. Lots of cool world building that they can do here. It's cool enough that Clayface, or that they found a way for Clayface to be in this. Speaking of Gotham related stuff here, we can even see this character who I think has got to be Rupert Thorne, and I suspect his involvement in the show has to do with Dr. Phosphorus with regards to the backstories that we're going to get in the show. And speaking of, as we go throughout the panel, so I'm going to kind of like trinkle in panel details here over this larger trailer breakdown and overall DCU discussion, but we're going to get a bit more in depth into bonus DCU details a little bit later. But the structure of the show does tell a single story while exploring the backstory of these characters. So Gunn mentions how the first episode you see the team come together, just like in that first teaser trailer. But then every episode after that explores the backstory of one of the characters, not necessarily the origin, although in some places the origin, but just something from their past that we see about how they got to the place and where they are today. And we get to know these characters in a much more intimate way because of that. And Gunn even says that we get to see that some of them are a lot better than maybe we think they are at the beginning of the series, and some of them are even worse. But with regards to all of this, Gunn has said that he's had a lot of people saying to him, well, you know, this is just Guardians of the Galaxy. It's about a team of misfits coming together. And to that, Gunn says, well, there's some truth to that, but the truth is, at the end of the day with Guardians of the Galaxy, you know all of those characters are good people. This isn't necessarily the case. This is kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy with the sentimentality stripped back, because the characters aren't all perfect and the stories aren't perfect, and characters die, and it isn't always for a purpose, like when Yondu dies at the end of Guardians 2. Sometimes it's just a tragic circumstance, and it's a darker story than that in a lot of ways, but hopefully equally invigorating. Now, when he says characters die, I do assume, believe it or not, that this could be the Creature Commandos themselves, rather than just referencing, you know, them killing characters, which they seem to do a lot of in the trailer, like, you know, random characters out there. I think that not necessarily every Creature Commandos character will die, but this mission Waller puts them on, or like a handful of missions, maybe one or two of them could go, whereas clearly others survive, such as, you know, Rick Flag Sr. going on to play his role in Superman, and then Peacemaker Season 2. Now, since we're speaking about the whole structure, the tone of the show, well, this brings me to the emotion, because I often say this is Gunn's speciality. Out of all the wackiness that we get that compels you to laugh with his projects, the next minute you can then be jumping into a tearjerker scene. So the show is said to be hugely emotional, despite them saying that they strip away the sentimentality at the same time. I think with that description, it's just their way of executing this feeling in this series is a little bit different to the way as Gunn compared it to like Guardians of the Galaxy earlier. But, you know, it gets so in depth to the point of where Gunn said that he remembers writing episode 4 and he walked into the kitchen and he was like, I think this is the saddest thing I've ever written in my entire life. It really is heartbreaking, and I could just feel it in my bones how sad it was. So I'm preparing myself, and I reckon what he's talking about there, I mean, to be fair, it could have something to do really tragically with David Harbour's Frankenstein, but I think it's going to be Nina Mazursky, especially with some of the scenes that get teased in the trailer. I think it's really going to get to me. But yeah, let me know if you have any theories there. But when Gunn, you know, just to kind of big this series up even more, and I know this obviously has a bit of bias from Gunn, but he really does big it up in this moment. So when he talks about how the series even came to be and what it was like working on it, he says that the first episode was good. And then the second episode, I was like, oh, shoot, wow, this is actually really good. Then it got to the fourth episode, and I'm like, this is the best experience I've ever had with a director that wasn't myself. And then when episode 7 came about, and I'm like, this is better than myself. This is the best experience I've ever had on any project I've ever worked on, including Guardians, including the Avengers movies, including anything. So the fact that James Gunn, you know, went into this, and you heard others on the panel say this as well, like, is this as good as we think it is? As they were going throughout the creative process, they genuinely, like, you probably want nothing more when working on something like this behind the scenes than it to feel like it's actually on fire in all the best ways. So for them to communicate this, again, I'm very aware that they want to gas the show up. This is a panel about the show, for crying out loud. But there is authenticity and genuine, you know, kind of feelings being expressed here with how much this was just a pleasant experience. And it's not just Gunn saying stuff like this, by the way. For months, from David Harbour to other people, they've been communicating how much fun they had working on this show and how good they think it is with what they've seen already. So hearing that is really, really high praise, and, you know, setting up the show to have quite high expectations from us as the audience. So it better be good, James, and I'm sure it will be. But like, that is crazy statement in just terms of bolstering a lot of confidence there. Like, one of the best, if not the best thing he's worked on ever. Now, as for some insight on some of the characters from Creature Commandos, Gunn mentions that Zoe Chow, who plays Nina Mazursky, absolutely kills him in terms of like a heartfelt way, because he goes on to say that the heart of Nina Mazursky was the heart of the show. She's one of the leads along with the Bride and Rick Flag Sr., and Zoe Chow herself says that she is an aquatic being, half human, half fish. She can only breathe in water and wears a water suit and a water helmet tank. And at night, she goes to sleep in a bathtub. And I remember that scene in the trailer where we have G.I. Robot just running around with her in the bathtub. And she's arguably the kindest and most reasonable of this bunch. And even though she's had a tragic origin story, she remains a very open and feeling character. And it's kind of the pathos in this season. And I think that's her superpower. And I think for me, honestly, she's absolutely for sure one of the characters I'm looking forward to most, because I can just tell she's gonna have a very feelsy journey, as I was getting into earlier, and I think her and G.I. Robot will have a brilliant dynamic and friendship. As for David Harbour's Frankenstein, Gunn says that this version of Frankenstein does go back a lot to the original version from Mary Shelley, but David Harbour then says that it's also definitely its own take at the same time, but you do have this Frankenstein and the Bride story that has a bit of a traditional thing to it. He has the inner workings of a tantrumy 4-year-old, and he then teases that the story of Frankenstein's monster, you know, being this being that was created to be like a companion who finds himself needing a mate and having no one. And so one is created for him, and that's not the way to get a girl. And from that, and with what we've already been teased before this, you can imagine that the bride won't be too fond of just the position she was put in or created in with regards to Frankenstein, and how that's going to affect their relationship and dynamic throughout the show, whereas Frankenstein will likely be pining after her and she's kind of just like, get away from me. It's a very complicated past, Frankenstein. But as for Frank Grillo, Gunn says that he's been talking about working with him for absolutely forever. He says that he has to take care of all of these maniacs. And we even learned that David's Frankenstein had Frank Grillo laughing for hours and hours in the booth, but even crying quite a bit. So, more to that emotion there. David Harbour says that there's a bit of a bromance going on between those two characters. And also, another interesting thing is that Frank Grillo acknowledges that he has been asked if he has white hair in Peacemaker Season 2, but he doesn't. Now, although they tried to make it look as close as they could in Peacemaker or even Superman in his scenes in the upcoming movie, it is still different, and that's because he was doing another show at the time, so they couldn't quite match it up to what a lot of you guys have been pointing out with how in Creature Commandos, Rick Flag Sr.'s hair is like way whiter than what it is in Superman from what we saw from those set photos. Now, Alan Tudyk said that Dr. Phosphorus is not a good man, a homicidal killer, and takes joy in causing pain. And yeah, you can definitely tell that in the trailer. He mentions how you do get his backstory, and he expands that we are going to see where everybody came from and somewhat their origins. There are moments where you are shocked in horror and moved, and then the same characters can make you laugh and make you cringe because they're so violent and screwed up. Now, Gunn says that Indira Verma, who plays the bride, couldn't make it to the panel, but he says that she's incredible in the show, and that, interestingly here, the bride is in a lot of ways the protagonist of the show, and she's just amazing. Gunn then teased in this moment that they also have some great people that came in for guest spots in the show, such as Michael Rooker playing a character, Peter Serafinowicz, I probably butchered that, Linda Cardellini, Ben Davis, and Greg Henry, who we do know what role he plays, and that's Nina Mazursky's dad, which I think he's it's going to lend to quite a bit of her backstory there from what's teased in the trailer. Now, I've seen a lot of people being like, okay, so which one of them could be voicing Clayface? And I know a lot of people have pointed towards Michael Rooker. Yeah, I mean, it could be, it might not be. We don't know. Now, as we broach just the larger DCU conversation now, as we kind of move our way slightly out of Creature Commandos, Gunn does stress that it's first and foremost about story. And I really feel like he doubles down here on what he said before, such as on the Michael Rosenbaum podcast and in other places, that they don't want anybody coming to Creature Commandos and going, oh, like you have to watch the Suicide Squad to understand what's happened in Creature Commandos. Oh, you have to watch Peacemaker. They want people to come in totally blind and totally excited by it, so that there's nothing that isn't explained in the show itself. And I think this is something that is very true. We knew about this a long time ago. Yes, there's stuff that can help aid you with the broader world building, I suppose, but it's executed in the story in such a way where your friend Jack can just come in and be like, this show is badass in of itself, and the show will explain to you certain situations and dynamics that can be totally understandable without having to see Rick Flag Jr. die in the suicide. That will be explained to you in the show. So I think this is very important, and it will be reflected in each and every DCU project, from Superman to, I don't know, Woman of Tomorrow to Swamp Thing. Each one is going to be its own thing. And this is, leading into the next answer that Gunn gives when being asked, how does it set a creative template going forward, if it does at all? So this is where Gunn said this show is its own thing, and every single project that comes out of DC Studios is going to be its own thing. We want this to be very different from what Superman's going to be when that comes out. We want Peacemaker to be very different from that when that comes out. But also, those are just things I'm doing. Right now, Anna Nogueira and Craig Gillespie are dealing with Supergirl, and it's just going tremendously well. We have Chris, Damon, and Tom who are dealing with Lanterns, getting ready to shoot that, and that's been going amazingly well. So every one of those things is going to be very different. It's a connected universe, but we're not imposing any sort of overall aesthetic, and the Creature Commandos show is definitely its own thing, as you can see. Now, this may sound familiar to some of you, but it might be brand new to a lot of you as well. This is something I'm quite excited by with the DCU, without me like rambling about this one. The good thing about it is that I think it will forge a new wheel in terms of the cinematic universe formula, without having to have every cinematic universe movie having the same kind of aesthetic and tone and structure and everything to it. Like, each one will be unique, as Gunn has put it in another way before. In a Swamp Thing comic, it feels like a Swamp Thing comic. It doesn't feel like a Superman comic. A Superman comic will feel like a Superman comic and not a Batman comic, and thus each project in live action adapting those characters should feel unique to that. Do you know what I mean? Not have like, oh, this cinematic universe tone that is just, you know, makes it feel samey and offers this repetition and whatnot. So I think that is going to be something very unique to the DCU. The fact that even though it's a connected universe, yes, even with an overarching story in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, each story will also be unique in of itself, with its own kind of experience and flavor as per the comic books of those characters. So yeah, absolutely hyped to see how that unfolds and actually how it could impress audiences the more projects come out. Now, when Gunn was asked about how James has said before that the intention is to potentially see some of these characters in live action, so does that inform how they are animated, in that you don't want to go too far, you want to be able to convey them if and when they go into live action? Gunn then says, absolutely. Not only do we want to, but I mean, Rick Flag appears in Superman. He's a major character in Peacemaker Season 2. And so, yeah, when we cast a character, we wanted to cast people who could play those characters in live action. At least for the major characters, he adds. So that was just something we thought of from the beginning. Gunn then goes on to say that there are references to some other things that happened in the past, and then those things become canon in the DCU because we mention them in this show. So examples would be references to Peacemaker situations, such as Rick Flag Sr.'s son who died, which makes that canon to the DCEU story within that of the Suicide Squad. And then we learn other things that have happened in the past in other media that have still happened. So there, with that last comment, he's saying, so other media, I guess, within the DCEU technically, or maybe even other media. Now, what would an example of that be? Maybe a reference to someone like Blue Beetle. I don't know why they would bring him up in Creature Commandos, but maybe somebody makes fun of a bug or a Blue Beetle bug over in Primera City or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And then people would be like, okay, like mostly the Blue Beetle origin movie, which doesn't really step on any toes of canon in the DCU, is canon. Do you know what I mean? Other things like that. So this is just really pertaining to what Gunn has said before, and how some strands or threads of DCEU canon will be maintained into the new DCU over here. And the perfect example is really Rick Flag Jr. dying at the hands of Peacemaker. But I reckon the butterfly invasion, among other things in Peacemaker, happened as well. But obviously, the Justice League scene at the end didn't. Gunn then very interestingly says that they have ideas for other things, and a couple of these people on the panel, as in the cast, may appear in other media as other characters soon. And he looks over all the way to the end of the cast towards Alan Tudyk, and I think this is most likely a reference to Alan Tudyk reportedly being cast in an undisclosed role in Superman. And no, I don't think this is him reprising his role as Dr. Phosphorus. I think, as Gunn was teasing here, is him voicing another role. And I think the role that fits perfectly for Alan Tudyk, well, it could be a couple, but my first speculation was kind of to do with the Fortress of Solitude and maybe some kind of Kryptonian aid or like robot, if you will, some kind of AI maybe kind of thing. But then again, we do see set photos of Superman speaking to a certain squirrel, and do you know what I mean? Like, who knows? Alan Tudyk's acting and voice acting ability is so versatile that, yeah, it could be a number of things. And then when asking about updates for the larger DCU with how busy Gunn is, we then get to Superman. So, as Gunn says here, Krypto was mentioned. We have Krypto in the house. Krypto's been something that has been just amazing. We've been working with him in the edit, and he's an incredible part of the story. He was an incredible part of the story to me personally. When I was writing the screenplay, he kind of came in and changed everything up. But what Gunn teases next, man, I mean, again, I know he would gas up David Corenswet here, but I do believe this. I really, really do. So, Gunn says about David Corenswet, and he takes a moment before he continues, is going to blow people the away. He is the movie star that everyone just dreams he could possibly be. And I don't think anyone really understands the depth of this guy's talent dramatically, comedically. He's the best physical action star I've probably ever worked with. And then they joke about maybe Frank Grillo as well. But he goes on to say he's just an amazing actor. And Rachel Brosnahan, people are going to die for her as Lois. Eddie Gathegi is Mr. Terrific. So it's really been a great process. So just hearing him talk with such confidence, well, again, I know he would, but there was something very genuine in the way he was expressing that. And to me, who's very happy with this casting, and I have a lot of faith in his ability to play Superman. Like, say what you will if you have any reservations or apprehensions about Gunn doing a Superman movie or the way he might tackle it and adapt it. But I have no doubts when it comes to David Corenswet. I think he will be an impeccable Clark Kent. And as for the movie overall, by the way, this was really cool to hear. He says that the movie is going extraordinarily well overall. We're deep in the process of editing, and that the edit is getting really close to being, you know, good. I mean, the movie is good, so it's like, I feel good about it, and I'm really hard on stuff, so it's been fantastic. So this movie, I think with how well Gunn has done with the prep of it, and how he even mentioned on Threads recently, the assembly cut was done long ago, I think they're kind of ahead of schedule. Now that is me assuming quite a bit, because there's still a lot of stuff that goes into making a movie. There's probably lots of VFX that they need to polish going well into next year, into the spring, this, that, and the other, but it's really going swimmingly well. This one was super intriguing as well, because when being asked about the Superman trailer, is there a trailer yet? Gunn jokingly says, see, now you're teasing them. Don't get too excited. There's no trailer. There's no Superman trailer right now. But then he says, there's lots of stuff. It won't be too long before we see a trailer, but it's also not going to be too soon. Now, I did tweet out, so, could that be CCXP as per what we were talking about in December? And if you don't know already, long story short here, David Corenswet alongside his stylist on a podcast were talking about the movie's promo and what they would need to be fitting him for with regards to suits, and how there's something in December. So a lot of us were thinking, well, with how well this movie's going and how they could easily put something like 20 seconds out, not even official trailer one, just a teaser, 15, 20 seconds, just something like that, right? That could happen at CCXP, and where that's a big event, it's a big convention. They do announcements there, if you know what I mean. They do. But you know what I'm trying to say. However, the way Gunn worded that, it won't be too long before we see a trailer, but it's also not going to be too soon. I would say December is arguably kind of too soon. The trailer I think we're gonna get, along with a lot of you, probably does feel like around the Super Bowl. So maybe he is really just speaking about a trailer. We're talking like official trailer 1. And normally you get a teaser before that. So I don't want to rule out a teaser of some description, or at the very least a poster in December, something like that, right? I guess I would sign this off on saying, don't get your expectations to the point of thinking, okay, absolutely CCXP, but I'd love to know what you guys are vibing from what he said there. Now, as for what Gunn could tease about seeing the story for Supergirl on the big screen, well, he says that Anna and Craig have been doing a fantastic job of spearheading this. We start shooting in England in January. I just saw, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I just saw the screen test for Ruthie with Millie Alcock, and oh my god, I'm so excited. And yeah, that's another project that's just been blessed from the beginning. Anna came in and pitched the story to me of Supergirl, and it was just one of the best pitches I had ever heard, and she immediately wrote it. She came in with the first draft, and that was great, and it just got better and better. And Craig has been incredibly easy to work with, and I can't wait for that one to come out. It is very much based on Tom King's comic, Woman of Tomorrow, as we know here. But what he says next is also interesting. There are, of course, differences because it's a 3-act structure, so it's a little bit different in the structure, which kind of goes through various stories, but it has all of the major characters and major themes. Supergirl's a mess, and it's something I can't wait for people to see. I think it's a completely different, unique take on a superhero. So once again, another project going swimmingly smooth. I'm liking everything that I'm hearing there. Can't wait to see Millie Alcock play a Supergirl that's a mess, but a journey that kind of helps her find her place in where she's been struggling. And I do hope, and I think a lot of us are thinking we could get a glimpse of that in Superman, because I do think she's been on Earth for a while, but we don't need to get into that theory time right now because we now need to talk about his teasers for Lanterns. So Gunn says that Aaron Pierre, who's playing Jon Stewart, is somebody he's wanted to work together with for a long time. People don't know, but he was almost Adam Warlock. He's an amazing actor, and I've just really admired him from the beginning of his career. So when it got down to it, he was just fantastic, and seeing him read with Kyle was sort of one of those miraculous moments where you go, oh my god, I don't care what they're saying, I just love everything they're saying together, and that is music to my ears. I know people have reservations about the casting or Carl Chandler being 59, what the hell? And since this is what it is, this is where Hal Jordan is at with being a Lantern Legend veteran. If Carl Chandler is good at playing Hal Jordan at an older age, like I'm down for it. And knowing that Aaron Pierre is like really good as like a younger rookie Jon Stewart, I'm super hyped. And what he goes on to say here with Chris, Damon, and Tom have put this thing together. It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning. It's something when we first started the DCU and the first couple of weeks of heading this up, we got together and the group of writers, and Tom King was one of those writers, and we were in this room and we came up with this sort of concept for Lanterns. And then we got Chris and Damon involved, and it just kind of has just come out very easily, very naturally. It's a very grounded series, a very real series, which is strange to say in a Green Lantern show, but it's just going to be something like nobody has ever seen before, and I can't wait for people to catch it on HBO when it comes out. And I think what he means by the end there, I think I'm just predicting some people might react to that, but I've always expected that clearly. This is still going to be in the DC Universe where you literally have a flying Krypto the Superdog. That's not to be forgotten. It's just that it doesn't mean you're not going to have different tones of, I guess you could say the word severity, or even age rating possibly, with different characters. I'm not saying this is going to be R-rated, but just to convey my thoughts here, with different projects in the DCU. So I've always expected this. As soon as he said that it's inspired by True Detective, and, you know, I do suggest you do some homework if you haven't seen it yet. Watch Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson's True Detective Season 1. Incredible show, one of the best shows I've seen. ever, to be honest. And I'm not saying this is going to copy and paste that, but since that is an influence, and Hal and John are investigating this murder in the American heartland, and, you know, they uncover this ancient mystery, this terrifying threat, I am all about that. And knowing, you know, that it's going to be a bit more grounded in the feel of that, yet they're still going to suit up and, you know, equip the Green Lantern ring and fly about, I'm sure. I think it's going to be kick-ass. And again, just, like, listen to how he talks about how smooth the process is going for DC Studios and their projects. And that's not to say that every project will be smooth, but with it being its own entity, as Gunn says, and how they're taking their time, like you've heard him say before, we're not doing jack shit until a script is ready, until it feels like it's ready to cook. We're not making the mistakes those studios make time and time and time again, where products rushed out, certain execs want bonuses, this, that, and the other. Oh, it's flopped. I wonder why. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that these movies are going to be great, maybe some more than others, but the approach beforehand in pre-production, even before that in active development, the fact that they're trying to get that right as best as they can, it's just music to my ears. And through them taking their time and curating something slowly but surely, it's proving to go from the active development stage into production in what sounds to be such a successful way with regards to having the recipe or the ingredients for a recipe for success. So all I have to say there, ladies and gentlemen, at the end here is hype. I am hyped. I really, really am. Like, I didn't expect crazy things from this panel, but I loved the insight behind Creature Commandos. This was a Creature Commandos panel. I didn't expect a Superman teaser because I felt like that would have, you know, stolen the thunder from this panel. But it was nice that we did get some expanded thoughts on the larger DCU at the end of it. And that was just, like, nice. You know, things like just little flavors of, oh, we're getting Clayface in Creature Commandos, and now this gives us a flavor of what the DCU's Batman's Rogues Gallery is like. I mean, we always knew it would be fantastical, clearly, but it's just having something tangible now to kind of put it towards in our brains is just, you know, I can ramble about this forever, but I'm going to shut up now. This is a long video, got a lot of editing to do here, so let me know your thoughts, your theories, anything about everything we discussed down in the comments below. If you got this far, guys, I would deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate a like. It really does mean a lot, you helping this video float out there more in the algorithm through hitting that like button. Consider subscribing for more breakdowns just like this for the DCU. But until next time, I really appreciate your support. Just thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Next video is going to be about the Penguin, so get yourselves ready for episode 5. But until then, I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.